The smell of burning wire reached Darren Hale before the alarms did. He was in the lower maintenance corridor, elbow-deep in a coolant relay, when the sharp chemical bite hit the back of his throat. He pulled his head out of the panel and sniffed once. Not a small burn, not a spark from a loose connection. Something big was going wrong somewhere nearby, and it was doing it fast. The alarms confirmed it 4 seconds later. Darren grabbed his tool belt and moved. The lower docking ring of Cradle Point was a maze of narrow corridors and pressurized fuel lines, and he knew every turn of it. He had spent 3 years learning this station from the inside out, first as a soldier assigned to guard it, then as the maintenance tech who stayed when his unit rotated out. He had nowhere else to go, and the work suited him. It was honest. Things broke. You fixed them. Simple. The smoke thickened as he moved deeper into the ring. He passed 2 Verk crew members moving in the opposite direction, their large-scaled bodies pressing close to the walls as they went. One of them caught his arm. "Human, do not go forward. The fuel compression relay on Deck 7 has ruptured. The fire is chemical. We cannot enter. The heat channels inside those corridors will cook even Verk lungs." Darren looked past the Verk's shoulder. The corridor ahead glowed faintly orange. "Is anyone still in there?" The Verk hesitated. That hesitation told him everything. "Who?" Darren said. "The young warden's daughter. She was inspecting the lower systems when the rupture occurred. The section sealed automatically." The Verk's voice was tight. "We have sent for cutting equipment. It will arrive in 11 minutes." Darren did the math. 11 minutes in a sealed chemical fire was not survivable, not for anyone. He looked at the Verk, then he looked at the corridor. "Get me a coolant suit, the emergency one in the rack behind you. It will not protect you fully." "I know." He was already moving toward the rack. 11 minutes is too long. Give me the suit." The suit was designed for coolant spills, not fires. It would slow the heat transfer, not stop it. Darren knew this. He pulled it on anyway, sealed the collar, and wrapped his face in the secondary breathing filter from his tool belt. It would last maybe 4 minutes before the chemical smoke got through. He went in. The heat hit him like a wall. Even through the suit he felt it pressing against his skin, looking for a way inside. The corridor was narrow and half visible through the smoke. He moved low, where the air was slightly cleaner, keeping one hand on the wall to track direction. He found her 20 meters in. She was large, even young. Verk were large, and she was crouched behind an overturned equipment cart, using it as a shield against the heat. Her scales were a deep blue-green, and several of them along her left side were already cracked and blackened at the edges. She looked up when he came through the smoke, and her eyes went wide. "You are human," she said. Her voice was rough from the smoke. "Yeah," Darren coughed into the filter. "Move now, stay low and follow me." She moved. Whatever training she had, it was good. She did not argue or freeze. She got low and followed him back the way he came, moving fast through the orange-lit corridor. They were 15 meters from the exit when the ceiling gave. It was not a full collapse. One support beam, heated past its tolerance, dropped from the left side of the corridor with a sound like a gunshot. Darren saw it in the half-second before it hit. He did the only thing there was time to do. He got both arms up and took it. The weight was enormous. He felt something go wrong in his left arm instantly, a white-hot wrongness that traveled from wrist to shoulder in a single flash. The right arm held for a moment longer. He braced his legs and shoved sideways, pushing Risa clear of the beam's path with everything he had left. She made it past. He did not pull back in time. The beam came down fully and Darren went with it, pinned against the corridor floor. The pain was beyond anything he had a word for. He was aware of shouting from somewhere ahead, the exit, voices, the sound of running feet. He was aware of hands pulling at the beam. He was aware of the heat, still pressing in from all sides. Then he was not aware of very much at all. He woke up in the medical bay. The light was white and steady. Nella Rowe was sitting in the chair beside him, her med tablet on her knee, her eyes watching him with the careful expression she used when she was trying not to show how worried she was. Darren looked down. Both arms ended above the elbow, cleanly bandaged. No pain yet, the blockers were still running, but the absence was there, heavy and total and very real. He looked back up at Nella. "Did she make it?" he said. His voice came out rough. Nella nodded once. "She made it." Darren closed his eyes. "Okay," he said. And he went back to sleep. The prosthetics were gray and functional, and Darren hated them immediately. Not because they were ugly. He did not care much about how things looked. He hated them because they were slow. Every signal from his nervous system had to travel through a small translator chip implanted just above each elbow, get converted, and then instruct the prosthetic fingers to move. There was a delay of half a second between intention and action. Half a second did not sound like much. When you spent your life working with your hands, half a second was enormous. He sat in the fitting room and opened and closed the left prosthetic hand 12 times while the technician watched a progress screen. Open, pause, close, open, pause, close. "That's actually very good for a first session," the technician said. Darren said nothing. He was fitted for both arms in 2 hours. Then he was sent to see Admiral Solis. The Admiral's office was tidy in the way that offices belonging to people who were never truly comfortable looked tidy. Everything placed carefully, nothing personal on the desk. Solis was a tall man with short gray hair and the measured voice of someone who delivered bad news regularly and had learned not to let it touch him. He told Darren about the reassignment in 3 sentences: non-technical duties, administrative support, effective immediately. Darren sat across from him and listened without expression. "You understand this is not a reflection of your service," Solis said. "Yes, sir. The prosthetics may improve with time. There may be options down the road." "Yes, sir." Solis looked at him for a moment, clearly expecting something, an argument, maybe, or visible distress. When neither came, he nodded and stood, and the meeting was over. Darren walked back through the station corridors with both prosthetic hands at his sides, and the half-second delay followed him the whole way. He was sitting alone in the lower observation lounge when she found him. He heard her before he saw her, the soft, heavy sound of large clawed feet on metal flooring, careful and deliberate, the way Verk moved when they were trying not to startle someone. He turned his head and Risa was standing in the doorway. She was taller than he remembered. Or maybe the corridor and the fire had made everything seem smaller. She was wearing no ceremonial markings, no guard, nothing to indicate who she was. Her cracked scales from the fire had begun to heal along her left side, leaving new growth that was slightly lighter in color than the rest of her. She looked at his arms first, then at his face. "I have been trying to find you for 2 weeks," she said. "I was in medical. I know they would not let me in." A pause. "I am Risa, daughter of Warden Kale of the Verk Dominion. You saved my life." "I know who you are," Darren said. "Word travels." She came into the room and stopped a few feet away, which for a Verk her size was still quite close. She seemed uncertain, which looked strange on her. Verk, in Darren's experience, did not do uncertain well. They were built for certainty, large bodies, long memories, ancient traditions that told them exactly what every situation required. "I came to offer formal acknowledgement of the debt," she said. "In Verk custom, when one life is given for another, the debt is recorded and—" "You don't owe me anything," Darren said. She stopped. "I would have done it for anyone," he said. "It was not false modesty. It was simply true. You were in there and there was time to reach you. That's all it was." Risa stared at him. He had the impression that these words had landed somewhere unexpected inside her, and were causing a problem he did not fully understand. "That is not," she stopped, tried again. "That is not how the Verk understand such actions." I know, he looked back out at the stars, but it's how I understand them. She stood there for a long moment. He did not try to fill the silence. He had never been good at filling silences. And since losing the arms, he had become even less interested in trying. Silence was honest. Silence did not ask anything of him. Finally, she said, "You are the strangest human I have encountered." "There are stranger ones," he said, "I promise." Something shifted slightly in her posture. Not quite a smile. Verk faces did not do what human faces did, but a loosening. She left without ceremony, the way she had come. From the corridor outside, unseen, Tova watched the human sitting alone by the stars. Her hand had been on her blade for the entire visit. Now she lowered it slowly. She did not like the human, but she noted, with the precision of someone whose entire function was to watch Risa closely, that the young princess walked differently on the way back to her quarters than she had on the way there. Lighter somehow. Tova filed the observation away and said nothing. Back in the lounge, Darren picked up the prosthetic hand he had set on the seat beside him and looked at it for a long time. Then he set it back down and did not put it on. Outside the viewport, the dying star at the center of the system pulsed once, faint and deep, like a heartbeat that had forgotten it was supposed to stop. Risa did not understand what to do with a debt that the debtor refused to accept. She sat across from Elder Vorath in his chambers and laid out the problem plainly, because Vorath was old enough that you did not waste his time with anything but plain speech. She told him what the human had said, that he would have done it for anyone, that she owed him nothing. Vorath listened with his eyes half closed, the way he always did when he was thinking hard. "And do you believe him?" Vorath said. "I believe he meant it," Risa said. "That is what confuses me." Vorath was quiet for a long time. His scales were nearly white with age, and the flame nerves beneath them barely flickered anymore. Just a faint warmth, the way embers looked the morning after a fire. He had lived longer than most Verk records bothered to track, and very little surprised him anymore. "The debt does not disappear because the creditor disclaims it," he said finally. "You carry it regardless. What changes is how you choose to repay it." "He does not want repayment." "Then perhaps," Vorath said, "you must find what he needs rather than what he wants. They are rarely the same thing." Risa thought about this on the walk back through Cradle Point's wide central corridor. She thought about the way the human had sat by the viewport with his prosthetic arm sitting unused on the seat beside him. She thought about his face when she had called it a debt. Not offended, not embarrassed, just genuinely puzzled, as though she had told him that water owed something to the fire it extinguished. She went back to find him the next day, and the day after that. She did not announce these visits or explain them. She simply appeared, and Darren let her, which she noted was its own kind of answer. Their conversations were strange at first. The Verk and humans aboard Cradle Point worked together well enough on a technical level, schedules, logistics, station operations, but they did not often sit together and simply talk. There was too much history. Two species who had fought a war over a star system neither of them could fully use, who now shared the station above it as a condition of their peace agreement. Polite, functional, not warm. Darren did not seem to have received the part of the briefing about not being warm. He asked her questions that no one asked, not diplomatic questions, not careful questions, but the kind that came from someone who was simply curious. He asked her what Verk children were taught first. He asked whether her scales itched when they grew back after injury. He asked whether dragons dreamed, and when she told him yes, he nodded like it confirmed something he had always suspected. She learned in turn to read the small things about him. The way he went quiet when someone mentioned Admiral Solis. The way he always sat with his back to a wall. The way he flinched, just barely, just once, when the prosthetic hands failed to catch something and it fell to the floor. She noticed he never talked about the arms. On the 7th day of this, She watched him try to fasten a latch on a storage cabinet in the maintenance bay he still had access to. It was a small latch, two-stage, designed for human hands. He was working at it with the prosthetic fingers, and the half-second delay was making it nearly impossible. He tried 6 times. Each time the fingers closed just past the catch point or just short of it. He set his prosthetic hand flat against the cabinet and breathed slowly for a moment. Risa stepped forward and pressed the latch closed with the tip of one claw. Darren looked at her. "Do not," she said quietly, "tell me you had it." After a beat, he said, "I had it." She made a sound low in her throat that might, in a human, have been a laugh. He smiled, small, brief, real. She had not seen him smile before. It changed his face considerably. They stood there in the small maintenance bay, surrounded by the smell of coolant and old metal, and neither of them said anything for a long moment. Then Risa said, "My father has been sending messages about my return. I have been delaying answering them." Darren did not ask why. He never asked directly, but he was listening. "He will want me to come home and resume my position," she said. "I am the warden's daughter. My place in his view is clear." "And in your view?" She looked at the storage cabinet. "My view has been less clear since the fire." A pause. "I do not think I was supposed to survive it. I think I was supposed to be a lesson to my father about the dangers of sending me on inspection tour of neutral stations." Darren was quiet for a moment. Then, "Well, you didn't cooperate with that plan." "No," she said, "I did not." The faint humor faded after a moment, and she looked at him with something direct and serious in her eyes. "I have been thinking about what Voreth said, that a debt this deep requires something beyond repayment." She paused. "There is a ritual. I want to tell you about it." Darren crossed his arms, the prosthetic ones. The motion slightly delayed and waited. Outside the maintenance bay, Tova stood in the corridor with her hand no longer on her blade. She was listening. She told herself she was listening for threats. Voreth's chambers smelled like stone and old smoke, the way places smell when fire has lived in them for a very long time. The elder sat in the center of the room on a low platform that his bulk fit perfectly, as though the stone had shaped itself around him over the decades. Darren stood to his left. Risa stood to his right. Tova was at the door, which she had pulled half-closed behind her. She had not been invited to this meeting. She had come anyway, and Voreth had not told her to leave, which was permission of a kind. "You have told him about the binding flame," Voreth said. "It was not a question." "I told him what I know of it," Risa said. Voreth's ancient eyes moved to Darren. "And what did she tell you?" "That it's a ritual you perform when a life debt is too deep to repay any other way," Darren said. "That it shares something between two Verk, some kind of biological connection to your flame nerves." He paused. "She told me it's never been done with a human." "Correct on both points." Voreth settled slightly. "The binding flame does not grant power in the way old stories describe. It creates resonance. The flame nerves that run through every Verk body, the pathways that produce heat, that allow us to survive temperatures that would destroy most beings, those pathways vibrate at a specific frequency. The ritual attunes one being to another, makes the frequencies touch." "And in a human," Darren said. "Unknown," Voreth said simply. "In a Verk recipient, the resonance strengthens existing pathways, deepens tolerance to heat and fire, extends what the body can endure. In a human body that has no existing flame nerves, we do not know what would happen. The resonance would find something to attach to. Nervous tissue, bone, blood." He paused. "It may do nothing. It may cause considerable pain and then fade. It may cause damage. It may, in the worst case, kill you." The room was quiet. "Those are the true terms," Voreth said. "Risa knows them, now you know them." Darren looked at his hands, the prosthetic ones, gray and functional and slow. He thought about the latch on the storage cabinet. He thought about Admiral Solis and his careful 3-sentence reassignment. He thought about Nella's face when she sat beside him in the medical bay, working very hard not to show how worried she was. Then he looked at Risa. "I said before that you don't owe me anything," he said. "I know what you said. I meant it." "I know that too." Her voice was steady. "This is not about the debt anymore, Darren. It has not been about the debt for some time." She held his gaze. "You have been struggling, not with the arms, you would never admit that, with something underneath. I have watched you for weeks, and I know what a being looks like when they are deciding whether they still belong somewhere." A pause. "I am asking you to let me do this because you did something for me that I could not do for myself. Let me return that." Darren said nothing for a long moment. "Then you said it might kill me." "Yes." "You said it might do nothing." "Also yes." He thought about it for 10 full seconds. Voreth did not rush him. Risa did not rush him. Even Tova, behind the half-open door, was still. "All right," Darren said. Voreth's preparation took 2 hours. He worked in silence for most of it, drawing patterns on the floor in a mineral compound that Darren did not recognize, which began to glow faintly gold as Voreth's claws traced it. The smell in the room changed, less stone now, more heat, a clean, dry warmth like sunlight trapped in rock. When Voreth was ready, he gestured Darren to the center of the pattern. Risa stood at the edge. "The resonance travels contact to contact," Voreth said. "The initiating Verk must maintain physical connection throughout. If contact breaks before the ritual completes, it ends." He looked at Risa. "You will feel it draw from you. Do not stop." Risa placed one large clawed hand against the side of Darren's neck and shoulder, the place on a Verk body where the primary flame nerve cluster sat closest to the surface. "This may hurt," she said. "I've noticed Verk say that right before things get bad," Darren said. "We find it more honest than not saying it." It started as warmth, just warmth spreading from her hand across his shoulder and down through his chest. He thought, "This is not so bad." Then the warmth became heat, and the heat became something that had no good word in any human language, something that moved through him not like fire but like the memory of fire, like his body was suddenly being asked to remember every warm thing it had ever known at the same moment. He did not scream. He locked his legs and stayed upright through pure stubbornness, which Nella would have recognized immediately as his primary coping mechanism for everything. Then it peaked and stopped. He came back to himself on the floor with no memory of going down. Voreth crouched nearby, studying his face with clinical interest. Rice's hand was still resting on his shoulder. Her breathing was labored. "Did it finish?" Darren asked. "Yes," Voreth said. "Did it work?" The old dragon's expression was unreadable. "We will know," he said, "when we need to." The lockdown began at the 3rd shift change, when most of Cradle Point's crew was moving between posts, and the corridors were as full as they ever got. Darren was in the lower corridor returning a borrowed tool kit to the maintenance bay when the station's internal alert system switched from yellow to red without passing through orange, which meant whoever had triggered it had done it manually from a security panel. That was not a malfunction. That was a person. He set the tool kit down and listened. 3 corridors over, something heavy hit a wall. He moved toward the sound without deciding to. What he found in the central junction of the lower ring was organized and fast and professional. 6 figures in unmarked thermal armor, Verk made, he could tell by the joint configuration, had Tova pinned against the far wall. She was still fighting, which said a great deal about her, but 6-to-1 with containment weapons was a bad number for anyone. On the floor nearby, 2 of Rice's Verk attendants were already down. Risa herself was backed into the corner at the junction's end, and a 7th armored figure stood between her and everything else with a thermal lance pointed at the ceiling. The lead figure spoke in Verk. Darren did not need to understand every word. The tone was enough, the clipped, certain tone of someone delivering an ultimatum they fully expected to be obeyed. None of the 7 had seen him yet. Darren did a quick count. 7 armed Verk in containment gear. Him, with 2 prosthetic arms and a borrowed tool kit. He thought about going back for help. He thought about how far away help was and how fast this was moving. He picked up the heaviest tool in the kit, a long compression wrench, solid steel, and walked into the junction. "Hey," he said. Every head turned. The lead figure looked at him the way you look at something that does not fit into the situation you planned for. A human, unarmed essentially, walking in alone. "Leave," the figure said in standard trade language. "No," Darren said. He kept walking. 2 of them moved to intercept him. They were large and fast, and he knew he was not going to win this conventionally, so he did not try. He went low and he went fast, and he used the compression wrench on the joint seam of the nearest figure's knee. The one place Verk armor was thinnest because the knee joint needed movement, and the figure went down hard. The second one hit him with a containment blast at close range. The blast was thermal, designed to heat biological tissue to the point of incapacitation. Darren felt it hit him, and he waited for the pain. There was heat. There was significant heat, but it moved through him differently than it should have, as spreading outward from the impact point like he was distributing it, like his body was doing something with it rather than just receiving it. His vision blurred for a second. He stayed on his feet. The Verk who had fired stared at him. Darren hit them with the wrench. What followed was not graceful. He was not a trained hand-to-hand fighter in the traditional sense, and prosthetic arms with a half-second delay were not ideal in a close-range fight. But he had spent years in situations where the sensible thing was to stop and had not stopped, and that experience had a value that did not show up in any official record. 2 more containment blasts hit him in the next 40 seconds. The heat built up inside him each time, pressing against his skin from the inside, and each time he redistributed it somehow. Some internal process he had no name for yet, and kept moving. The 7 were no longer organized. 4 were down. 2 were backing toward the far door. The one with the thermal lance was still standing between Darren and Risa, but the lance was no longer pointed at the ceiling. It was pointed at him. Darren stopped. He was 6 feet away. The thermal lance at this range was not a stun weapon. It was a killing shot for anything biological. The figure fired. The heat that hit Darren was enormous, the kind of heat that should have ended the conversation immediately and permanently. He felt it slam into his chest and radiate outward through every nerve he had. His vision went white. Every cell in his body screamed. And he was still standing. The room was very quiet. Darren looked down at his chest. His shirt was scorched. His skin underneath was flushed red and radiating heat like a stone pulled from a fire. But he was standing. He was breathing. He was looking at the figure with the lance, and whatever they saw in his face made them take one step back and then another. He did not feel angry. He felt very, very calm. "Leave," he said, same word they had used on him, same tone. The 2 who were still standing looked at each other. Then they picked up 2 of the ones who were down, left the other 2, and moved for the door quickly and without ceremony. Tova had gone still against the wall. Her eyes were fixed on Darren. Risa stepped out from the corner. She looked at him for a long moment, at the scorched shirt, at the heat still visibly rising from his skin in the cool station air. Darren looked down at his hands, both the prosthetic ones. He raised them slowly and turned them over, studying them as if they belonged to someone he had just met. "Huh," he said. Behind him, Tova lowered her blade all the way for the first time since she had met him. The incident reports took 3 days to process and still did not fully describe what had happened. Admiral Solis read all of them. He read them twice, which was not his habit. On the second reading, he sat back in his chair and stared at the wall for a long moment, then sent a message to the Verk Dominion's diplomatic office requesting a full briefing. He received a reply within the hour, which was unprecedented. Whatever Rice's faction within the Dominion had decided, they had decided it quickly. Nella came to find Darren in the lower maintenance bay, where he had returned to doing what he always did, working. She stood in the doorway and watched him for a moment. He was using the compression wrench to reset a coolant relay, and the prosthetic hands were moving with their usual half-second delay, but he was working around it, anticipating the delay, adjusting his approach to match what he had rather than fighting it. "You walked through a thermal lance shot," she said. "I did," he said. "At point-blank range." "Yes." She came into the bay and sat on an equipment crate and crossed her arms. "Are you going to tell me how you feel about that?" Darren set down the wrench and turned to face her. He thought about it genuinely, the way he did with questions that deserved real answers. "Strange," he said. "Not bad strange, just different." Nella studied him with her careful medical eyes. "The heat you absorbed, are you still carrying it?" "No, it fades, slowly but it fades." He paused. "It's not like having a weapon, it's more like having thicker skin. Everything that would burn me still hits. I still feel it, I just don't." He stopped, searched for the word. "I don't break from it." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "That's the most words you've said at one time in 2 months." He picked the wrench back up. Voreth's explanation came that afternoon, in the Elder's chambers with Risa present and Tova standing at the door, properly inside this time, no longer pretending she was somewhere else. The binding flame, Voreth said, had found the human's nervous tissue and done something that no Verk ritual had intended and no Verk Elder had fully predicted. It had not created flame nerves where none existed. It could not do that. What it had done instead was remap the existing nervous pathways, the deep, old biological wiring that all living beings shared underneath their differences, and given them a new resonant frequency. The result was not fire. It was not even heat in the offensive sense. It was endurance, a capacity to receive damage, absorb thermal energy, and continue. The same capacity that allowed ancient Verk to survive the volcanic plains of their homeworld, the same capacity that made them what they were. In Darren, it would never be what it was in a Verk. His body was not built for it, but it was enough. Voreth suspected, based on what Darren had described, that it would be enough for a very long time. "Will it pass to anyone else?" Darren asked. Voreth looked at him with the ancient eyes. "Your blood carries a trace of the resonance now. It will not manifest in others without the full ritual, but it is there." A pause. "You carry a piece of Verk biology in your body until the day you die. There has never been a human who could say that." Darren thought about that. Then Risa spoke. She did not give a speech. Risa had learned in the weeks of their strange companionship that Darren did not respond well to speeches. She simply stood and said, "I am formally nomming you a ward of the Verk Dominion, not a title of rank, a title of belonging. Wherever you go, the Dominion recognizes you as one of ours to protect." Tova, from the doorway, took 3 deliberate steps into the room and moved to stand on Darren's left side. He looked at her. "I am not assigned to this," Tova said, in a tone that made clear she had assigned herself. "Risa does not need as much protecting as she used to." A pause that held something dry in it. "You, on the other hand, walk into rooms with 7 armed Verk carrying a wrench. You need someone watching your left." Darren looked at his left side, then at Tova, then at Risa. "I want to stay," he said, not asking, just stating a fact he had decided. "Not because of the title, not because of what I can do now, just—" He stopped, tried again. "There's a saying in my family, you belong where the work is real and the people are honest." He looked at Risa. "You told me you couldn't carry the debt and be who you were supposed to be. I couldn't figure out how to be who I was supposed to be either, until somewhere in the last few weeks it just happened." Risa said yes before anyone else could speak. That night, Darren stood on the observation deck alone. The dying star at the center of the system was doing what it always did, burning slowly and faithfully in the dark, giving what light it had left witut asking for anything in return. He thought about the fire in the corridor, the beam, the arms. He thought about Nella, who he would go find in the morning and sit with over something hot and not say much, because that was enough. He thought about a half-second delay, and how you learned to work around the things that didn't work anymore, and how sometimes working around them took you somewhere better than where you started. The star outside burned low and steady. Darren stood in the dark and let it. He was not the same man who had run into a burning corridor with a coolant suit and a stubborn streak. He was something the galaxy had not made before, and he had not gone looking for it, and it suited him fine. Some things you don't chase, they just find you in the smoke.